Now, you can't find living dinosaurs nowadays, which is a good thing, mostly, but you can still meet some creatures that might have gone to lunch with them. The frilled shark, for example, is a living fossil that comes from a family of sharks that have been around for about 80 million years. One of the coolest things about it is its long, eel-like body that can grow as long as 6 feet. It has 6 pairs of gills on its throat, which help the frilled shark breathe in the deep, cold ocean where there isn't much oxygen. The shark can move very quickly, like a snake, to catch its prey when it least expects it. Little frilled sharks take an exceptionally long time to grow, up to 3.5 years, which is one of the longest times for any animal with a backbone. The Chinese giant salamander is another living fossil that can tell you what was going on Earth around 170 million years ago. Now, when I say tell, I really mean it, as it can make sounds like hisses, whistles, and barks, and even a noise that sounds like a crying kid. The biggest Chinese salamander found so far weighed 130 pounds, as heavy as 2 Dalmatians, and was almost 6 feet long. Giant salamanders like to be alone. Hey, I want to be alone. And will chase away other salamanders from their space, except when it's time to start a family. During the day, they hide and sleep under rocks. They can make a special substance from their skin that keeps predators away. Now, gharials are reptiles that have been around for about 38 million years. They live in India and Nepal in slow-moving, muddy rivers. Sadly, there are very few gharials left in the wild, less than 100. These creatures can't control their body temperature, so they need to sunbathe to get warm or cool down in the water if they get too hot. Their eyes are close together and face forward, which helps them see in 3 dimensions and judge distances more accurately. Gharials also have a transparent third eyelid that protects their eyes when they're underwater. They have over 100 sharp teeth, but they can't chew their food. Instead, they use their strong jaws to grab prey and then, swallow it whole. The alligator gar is a fish that has a family history of more than 100 million years. It still has some cool features from ancient times, like being able to breathe both air and water. It also has a special spiral-shaped intestine, like a shark. The alligator gar is one of the biggest and heaviest fish in North America. Just like an alligator, it has a long body and snout, plus a row of sharp teeth. But instead of legs, the gar has fins to help it swim underwater. The tuatara isn't a lizard as you might think, and isn't a dinosaur either. This New Zealand resident is one of the most unique animals in the world. Scientists love studying tuataras because they can help us understand how today's lizards and snakes evolved. One of the coolest things about the tuatara is its third eye, called a parietal eye, on its head. It has its own lens, retina, and a nerve that connects it to the brain. Scientists think it might help the tuatara know when it's light or dark outside and absorb sunlight to make vitamin D or help them keep their body temperature exactly right. Tuataras can live an extraordinarily long time, up to 100 years. Cassowaries are the youngsters on our list, as they've been around for only 60 million years. They have some things in common with dinosaurs, like their 3-toed feet and how they breathe. Cassowaries love to eat fruit, lots and lots of fruit. This love of fruit helps the rainforest, because when cassowaries eat the fruit, their bodies don't harm the seeds inside. As they move around the forest, they spread these seeds, you can guess how, with their own natural fertilizer, helping new plants grow. Cassowaries are big birds, about 6 feet tall and weigh over 100 pounds. They have a special claw on each foot that is 5 inches long, and they can use it to kick real fast. If they feel threatened, they can charge, kick, and even jump on someone. They can also leap up to 5 feet in the air. So, the best thing to do is stay far, far away from where they live. The order Notostraca is a group of crustaceans that you may know as tadpole shrimp or shield shrimps. These animals have been around for about 360 million years. They have a wide, flat shell that covers their head, and they have a pair of eyes on top. These creatures can be found all over the world in different kinds of water, like freshwater, brackish water, and even salty pools. They can also look different depending on where they live. Notostraccans aren't picky eaters and can snack on pretty much anything, from plants to small animals and other shrimps. Some of them are considered pests in places like California rice paddies because they stir up the mud, which blocks sunlight from reaching the young rice plants. Sturgeons are some of the largest fish species on the planet. They live only in the cool waters of the northern hemisphere and never travel below the equator. Even though they are huge, sturgeons don't have teeth. They eat by sucking food off the bottom of rivers, gulfs, lakes, and oceans. Scientists believe that sturgeons came from a group of fish that first appeared around 419 million years ago, long before dinosaurs even existed. Their ancestors survived a big extinction event that wiped out 90% of all species and went on to become the largest fish in many rivers in North America and Eurasia. Sturgeons can live up to 100 years old or even older. Female sturgeons can lay up to 3 million eggs at a time, but not all of the eggs eventually turn into real fish. Our next hero, the Pacific lamprey, has successfully lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a mouth surrounded by teeth. They latch onto prey and sup up body fluids like real underwater vampires. And although he wasn't living underwater, the story goes that King Henry I of England might have lost his life because of a lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating its flesh. He got sick every time he'd have it, but the lack of bones and the unusual taste made the royal fall in love with it. As a result, he got some scary symptoms from eating lamprey and eventually passed away. Can you say clueless? The elephant fish, also called the Australian ghost shark, has been on Earth for around 400 million years. Even though they're related to sharks, they aren't actually sharks. Instead of bones, their bodies are made entirely of cartilage. These fish have a special shiny tissue in their eyes that can make their eyes look like they change color from yellow to green. Elephant fish can be pretty tough and will fight back if they feel threatened. They like to be alone and usually don't hang out with other fish. Horseshoe crabs also deserve the title of survival champs, as they've been around even before dinosaurs, since 450 million years ago. 4 species are still roaming the ocean from Maine all the way to Mexico. Horseshoe crabs are more like spiders than ticks than they are like real crabs. They have 9 eyes, plus extra light sensors near their tails, so they can see really well. They breathe underwater using flap-like gills near their belly, and sometimes they use these gills to swim upside down. Every spring, when the tide is high, these creatures come up to the beach at night to mate and lay their eggs, and you can see hundreds of thousands of them. Now, dinosaurs ruled our planet for over 165 million years, and some walk on our planet even today. Well, at least some of their descendants. Our modern birds evolved from what used to be a scary group of meat-eating dinosaurs we know as theropods. It all started during the Mesozoic era, about 250 million years ago, when a group of creatures called dinosaurs roamed Earth. They didn't look like those dinos that might have come to your mind, like Brontosaurus or T-Rex, but that's the group dinosaurs evolved from. These creatures walked on all fours and were as big as house cats. They didn't look as friendly, though, considering they were more like weird lizards with long, thin limbs. As you'd expect, this group wasn't exactly at the top of the food chain, but they were really fast and agile, which helped them survive. Over time, they adapted and started walking upright, so their legs were under their bodies instead of out to their sides. And over time, dinosaur morphs started growing long tails and bigger leg muscles. Their necks became stronger to support the new position they were in, and they even got extra hip bones that helped them move faster and more efficiently. That's when dinosaurs came on the scene, somewhere between 240 and 230 million years ago. Their name comes from the word dinosauria, which means terrible lizard. The oldest dinosaur fossils belong to these fellas that lived in Argentina. This one is even older, but we're still not sure if it's a real dinosaur or its relative, dinosaur morph. Now, considering the size of their ancestors, dinosaurs weren't large at the beginning, more like dogs or horses. There weren't many species back then, so if you could go back to that time, you'd see a bunch of reptiles walking around on two legs. But as time went by, they adjusted to different environments, and we got more interesting groups. For example, small and fast predators, like this guy. They all fall into the category of archosaurs, a group that also includes pterosaurs. Yup, their name may not imply it, but these are not dinosaurs. As some dinosaur morphs evolved into dinosaurs, they got certain advantages, like arms. They could do much more thanks to that. Some could catch prey using their hands, others could grasp branches. Now, the freedom they got by moving their arms later helped some of them evolve into birds and start flying. Dinosaurs were probably warm-blooded. It means they could stay active all the time. They didn't depend on the conditions around them like, for example, reptiles do. The latter are cold-blooded, and they have to rely on their surroundings to regulate their body temperature. Dinosaurs didn't rule the animal kingdom for the first tens of millions of years of their existence either. Crocs were at the top of the food chain back then. Then the Jurassic period hit, and new kinds of dinosaurs showed up, like those giant plant-eating dinosaurs, for example, sauropods. You know them, dinos with long tails and necks that could eat plants at different heights, such as Brachiosaurus. Allosaurus is another famous dino from that time you will probably recognize. Spikes on the tail, bony plates on the back, you know, good old Stegosaurus. The Jurassic period was that time when dinosaurs started to get bigger and bigger. Then the Cretaceous period came along, and finally these magnificent beasts reached the peak of their fame. That was the time when the mighty T-Rex took the throne and got to the top of the food chain. T-Rex probably lived around 28 years, but it reached adult size really fast. Now, it wasn't easy to survive back then. T-Rex falls into the category of tyrannosaurs, and scientists have found out those fellas were fierce even when they were at a pretty young age. They discovered a fossil of a teenage tyrannosaur that was 75 million years old, and it had two baby dinosaurs inside its stomach. They realized that when tyrannosaurs were at a young age, they went for small dinosaurs, such as these guys, their dino cousins. As they grew older, they started taking on bigger challenges, like those peaceful giant dinosaurs that like to hang out with their group and eat plants. But large predators weren't the only ones that would have made you shiver with fear. That was also the time when fast and smart creatures called velociraptors show up. They weren't some scaly dinosaurs that would catch their prey using those claws in the shape of sickles, like shown in the movies. Their bodies were covered in feathers, and they would grow up to 100 pounds, which is about the size of a wolf. And to bust one more myth, they didn't hunt in packs. Velociraptors probably preferred to hunt solo and use their claws not to slash their prey, but to clutch it. T-Rex and Velociraptor fall into the group called theropods. We mentioned them at the beginning, the creatures today's birds evolved from. But even though velociraptors were covered with feathers, they still couldn't fly. Their wishbones weren't shaped in a way to support flying, and their arms were too short. Maybe it was better that way because during the Cretaceous period, flying dinosaurs called pterodons were the ones that took over the skies. Things had been going really great for dinosaurs until one unfortunate day 66 million years ago when an asteroid hit our planet. It's not that the asteroid itself erased all the dinosaurs right away, but it caused changes in the environment, which made it way harder to survive. At that time, about 75% of animals living on our planet went extinct. The asteroid was really big. When it hit Earth, it created a giant crater in the Yucatan Peninsula and sent a lot of debris into the atmosphere, which blocked the sun right away. For months, dense clouds of dust blocked sunlight. Our home planet was darker and colder than before, which wasn't good for plants. Creatures that ate plants couldn't survive those changes either. So it all turned into a chain reaction when most of the ecosystem collapsed. When the dust finally cleared, all those greenhouse gases that had formed after the impact made temperatures go way higher than they had been in a really short period of time. All land animals that weighed more than 55 pounds were gone. But not everything disappeared. There were fewer plants, but they were less affected than animals, all because their pollen and seeds can survive really messed up conditions for a longer time. So, what we have today is basically the seeds we were left with back then. After the asteroid hit, flowering plants dominated our planet. All non-bird dinosaurs went extinct too. Some species survived as birds. At first, those brave survivors were small, but later, birds evolved to bigger sizes. Now, there's a study that says that if the asteroid had slammed into some other spot on Earth, the fate of many creatures and plants would have been very different. If the rock had fallen maybe a couple of minutes later, it would have hit deeper waters. Less rock would have vaporized and risen to block out the warmth and light coming from the sun. In that scenario, we'd probably still have dinosaurs around. For example, Triceratops was one of the last dinos that had nothing in common with birds. If the asteroid had missed our planet, we would see some of them still roaming around, but since evolution never rests, maybe in a little bit different form.
You wake up in the middle of the night to a phone buzz. You know what time it is, you ask sleepily, but then you sit up in a jolt.
Get your stuff and go outside. They'll come fetch you in 10 minutes,
says a male voice on the other end. You step out of your house and watch as a small helicopter descends on your lawn. You get inside and meet a scientist there. She's a specialist in archaeology and paleontology. As the helicopter takes off, she tells you that something terrible happened on one of the islands in South America, and you're flying directly there, right now. The whole operation is secret, so you're asked to give up your mobile phone. The helicopter flies far beyond the night city and lands at the airport. From there, you transfer to a plane and fly to the coast of South America. You land on a small island, and a guide ushers you to a jeep waiting nearby. For several hours, you and other scientists drive through the hot jungle. The road ends, and you continue your journey along a narrow path. You notice that the further you go, the quieter it gets. The birds don't sing, not even the leaves on the trees rustle. The jungle finally ends, and you find yourself on the coast. There are many tents with scientific equipment, people, and cars. Several people in black suits lead you toward some fallen trees. You end up in the middle of a large trench that leads to the ocean. The trench begins in the forest, right at the fallen trees. Judging by its size, a train could have passed here, but the truth is much scarier. After some research, you tell people the creature that left such a trace became extinct about 60 million years ago. The creature that uprooted so many trees is the largest snake that ever lived on Earth. You and the others must find out how this reptile managed to survive, and where it is now. Titanoboa usually lived in tropical forests near swamps. Apparently, the island is its home, but now something has forced the snake to crawl away into the ocean. You carefully examine the trench, then the fallen trees, and declare the snake was not alone. It was fighting something as big as itself. Everyone looks at you in shock, and the next moment, a deafening roar comes from the water, breaking the ocean's surface like a monstrous dolphin. A Mosasaurus emerges from the deep, a huge reptile that lived from 145 to 65 million years ago in almost all waters of the world. It looks a lot like a crocodile, has smooth, dark scales, a fin at the end of its tail, and flippers instead of legs. It measures 55 feet long, which is about the size of a 5-story building, and weighs like half a subway car. And this huge dinosaur is coursing the waters near the shore right now, in front of you. With its large fins, it creates waves that wash away several tents on the shore. People on the island scatter away in all directions. Several ships and yachts are capsized. People on lifeboats are hurrying to the shore. Mosasaurus was one of the most formidable predators, not only in the sea, but also on land during the Cretaceous period. No creature dared to attack this monster. so their population spread all over the world. It wasn't used to feeling like prey, but now it seems the dinosaur has met a worthy opponent. The Mosasaurus dives back into the water as if running away from something. A few hundred feet away, you notice a long, smooth body of the Titanoboa. It's stretched out to full length and is swimming after the Mosasaurus. The snake is 42 feet long. This is 1.5 times more than a rail car. The biggest snake on the planet comes to grips with the scariest underwater dinosaur, and you're standing witness. The Titanoboa wraps itself around the sea predator and drags it to the shore. With its flippers and fins adapted to the sea, the great dino will be at a disadvantage on land, but it has lungs, not gills. It needs air to breathe, so the fight continues. Both the snake and the lizard end up on the shore. You're watching them from behind the trees nearby. The snake squeezes its opponent hard and is winning, but the Mosasaurus manages to push the Titanoboa's head to the sand with its flipper. The snake lets the enemy go, and the Mosasaurus crawls back into the water because it's faster and more agile there than the snake. The Titanoboa slithers after its rival. The fight goes on underwater. The Mosasaurus manages to swim away from the shore and hide among the reefs and algae. Thanks to its dark scales, it's almost invisible there. The snake swims past, and the Mosasaurus jumps it from behind. Its powerful jaws are opening wide like a snake's. It clings to the opponent. The Titanoboa immediately reacts and wraps itself around the dinosaur. It bites the fin tail with its giant fangs. The two colossal animals are in a clinch now and don't know what to do next. The compressive force of the snake's grip is like the weight of the entire Brooklyn Bridge pressed onto a passenger car. The Mosasaurus is trapped, and it starts kicking and swinging its flippers. It begins to turn around its axis, wrapped by the snake. The rotation of two giant reptiles in the sea creates a huge funnel in the water. Whole schools of fish swimming around get trapped in there. The Titanoboa becomes dizzy from this merry-go-round. It loses concentration and opens its jaws. The lizard uses all its strength to break free, and the snake swims away from it. Now the dinosaur is chasing its opponent. The Titanoboa emerges from the water, not far from the shore. Helicopters fly around the island, recording the events. Yachts and small fishing boats sail to the site of the Battle of the Titans. The Titanoboa crawls out of the water and is about to disappear into the jungle, but the Mosasaurus grabs it at the last moment. There are 2 rows of teeth in its upper jaw. One of them is located closer to the pharynx. This row allows the dinosaur to hold its prey, while the prey resists. The duel continues on land. The trees around the 2 monsters shatter into splinters. The Titanoboa wraps itself around the enemy, opens its huge mouth, grabs the dinosaur's tail, and begins to slowly swallow it. The Mosasaurus realizes the great snake's strategy and begins to thrash around. The snake blocks its movements, so the dino digs into the sandy beach. After a short while, a large pit appears beneath the monsters. The sand gets into the snake's eyes, and it lets go of the opponent. The Mosasaurus is again slowly crawling towards the water, and the Titanoboa is in no hurry to catch it. You can see the reptiles are tired. The Mosasaurus swims away from the shore and stares at the snake. From the shore, it looks like an enormous log. 2 eyes the size of a football gaze intently at the snake. The Titanoboa lies in the sand and breathes heavily. Then, it stretches to its full length and looks back at the Mosasaurus. The snake's long body slowly bends, its muscles tense. The reptile is preparing to lunge. The dinosaur is slowly heading toward the shore. It growls and paddles with its flippers. Like a seal, it squelches through the shallow water towards the Titanoboa. The snake uncoils like a spring towards the enemy. At great speed, 2 predators collide with their heads. The hit is so strong, they lose their bearings and move away from each other. Now, each of them feels like a loser. The dinosaur slowly paddles into the water, and the snake returns to the jungle. The monsters are tired of fighting. There's no winner. You and the rest of the people stand with your mouths open in complete silence. You look around the island and notice trees with broken branches everywhere. In the depths of the island, you find a waterfall and huge wet stones. There are large scratches on many of them. Somehow, Millions of years ago, lots of ancient reptiles managed to survive global disasters on this island. And now, there are only 2 left. You conclude that the Mosasaurus and the Titanoboa have been fighting each other for years. Soon, these reptiles will gain strength again and continue their eternal struggle. You decide to leave the island before that happens.
That's right, come on aboard. Please enter the submarine slowly and make yourself comfortable. Today, we're going deep into the dark parts of the ocean for the ultimate showdown, Shonisaurus and Megalodon. Time to see how Shoni and Meg stack up against each other. First round, age. Look at Shoni, the largest marine reptile, coming out of nowhere. This marine reptile looks a bit tired since it traveled all night and got here all the way from the late Triassic period, about 215 million years ago. Back then, it was all dinosaurs, plus some crocodiles. Oh look, Meg got here on time too. She looks a bit more fresh and relaxed, probably because she's way younger than her contender. She started her dominance over the ocean 20 million years ago. Will she be able to stay on the throne after this duel? Meg went extinct about 2.5 million years ago, or at least we think she did. Only about 5% of the ocean has been explored, so spreading stories about an underwater giant shark is pretty easy. Who knows what's really hiding down there? Even though they're both extinct, dinosaurs like Shoni are way older. Meg's a baby compared to her. Sorry, Meg, 1 point goes to your older challenger. I bet Shoni's got some awesome stories to tell. Next round, length. Ah, good old Meg. She's the largest shark that ever lived on our planet, around 60 feet long. There aren't any full fossils of her to get a really accurate measurement. Scientists that study modern sharks can guess her length by her epic tooth size. Shoni was a little bit shorter, around 50 feet. She kinda looks like a bigger, bonier version of a dolphin. Dolphins can grow up to 13 feet long. Even the biggest dolphin, the orca, looks tiny. It's only 30 feet long. 1 point goes to Meg for being huge. And we're tied up at 1 apiece. Round 3, teeth. Meg was one of the greatest threats in the ocean with teeth similar to those of a modern white shark. Scary, symmetrical, triangular, insanely sharp, and up to 7 inches long. Meg had around 276 teeth in 5 rows. That sounds super scary, but some modern sharks have over 300 teeth. But they're not all ready for action. Some are fully grown, some are still growing up. Sharks' teeth are not that strong, so they fall out a lot, which is not that big a deal like it is for humans. They produce new teeth all the time, so they can replace the ones that get worn down. Get this, Meg probably worked her way through about 40,000 teeth over her lifetime. Shoni, unfortunately, won't be able to defend herself with teeth in this duel, because she doesn't have any. Researchers believe that younger Shonis had teeth because they needed some help getting food and fending off rivals. When they got bigger and older, they didn't need them anymore. Sorry, Shoni, this round isn't even close. Meg takes the lead 2-1. Next round, who can eat more? Scientists believe Meg ate around 2,500 pounds of food every day. Her teeth tell us she didn't exactly love the salad bar. With a mouth almost 10 feet wide, Meg had the most powerful bite of all animals on our planet. That way, she didn't have to be too picky. She could munch on bigger ocean animals like whales, giant turtles, seals, or any other marine mammal that got, too close. No wonder she weighed about 140,000 pounds. Because of her lack of teeth, Shoni preferred animals with softer bodies, like smaller fish, squids, that sort of stuff. We don't really know how much she ate every day, but with an approximate weight of around 60,000 pounds, she's heavier than 2 sperm whales or 3 elephants, but still peanuts compared to the mighty Meg. Good for you, Shoni. Keep up the good work with all that soft food. But unfortunately, Meg's eating up the points in this competition, 3-1. You don't really want to mess with someone who can eat a whole whale for breakfast. Round 5, looks. Scientists have reconstructed Meg to look like a bigger, just a little more dangerous version of a white shark. They were so similar that lots of people thought the white shark was Meg's great-great-great-grandkid. But the truth is that they're not related at all. Meg was the last member of a completely different lineage of sharks. She had a shorter nose and a flatter jaw that almost looked like it got squished somehow. Like the blue shark, she had really long pectoral fins to support her size and weight. Shoni looks like a tubby, bit quirky, and way bigger version of a dolphin. She has 4 flippers and a longer skull. And what's interesting is that she doesn't have a dorsal or sail fin. Shoni can't do any of those cool tricks and maneuvers that dolphins do. That part also probably doesn't help when she meets another hungry dinosaur. She can't dodge out of the way so easily. Still, Shoni's big enough not to have to worry about that kind of stuff. Step aside, Meg. Stop hogging the spotlight. We want to see more of this cute, funny dolphin-like creature. 1 point for Shoni. She's catching up 3-2. Round 6. Who has a cooler name? Shonisaurus means lizard from the Shoshone Mountains. Why? Because it's a lizard from the you get the picture. Cool name, huh? Megalodon, on the other hand, means large tooth. Yeah. Sorry, Meg, it's 1 point for Griffith. Wait a minute, wrong video. We're all tied up at 3-3. Round 7. Who traveled more? Just like modern sharks, Meg's skeleton isn't made of bone, it's made out of cartilage. That's the stuff your ear and nose are made out of. So, no matter how much you look for them, you're never going to find any of Meg's bones. Her only fossils are actually teeth, since they're made of dentin. In her 18 million years of existence, Meg traveled a lot. Her teeth have been found all over the globe. She even went on vacation to tropical and subtropical waters. But the one place she never went was to Antarctica. Shoni was a wanderer too. Her fossils were first found near Las Vegas. No, it's not what you think. She really wasn't all about the parties and shows. Vegas was all underwater back then. She too took long trips along the coast, visited different countries, enjoyed fancy seafood buffets all over the world. Pretty good life overall. Let's give Meg this one for making it to almost every continent. She leads 4-3. Round 8. Who was more popular? Seeing Shoni swim by could easily scare away other sea creatures. She's pretty big after all. But pretty soon, they'd see that this reptile wasn't that dangerous. Okay, squid, small fish, they weren't big fans. But medium-sized water creatures soon figured out they were too big for her, so they could be friends. Except for, the kraken, a colossal squid and legendary sea monster with extremely powerful tentacles. The story goes that the kraken had something to do with the disappearance of some members of Shoni's family. So let's just say they're not exactly BFFs. Meg, introvert, loner. She comes to the party and stays in the corner, not talking to anyone. And there weren't exactly a lot of animals lining up to ask her to dance. It'd probably be their last. When you're that high up in the food chain, you're never going to be too popular. Shoni makes a comeback with the popularity round, and it's all tied up at 4. Well, that means both of our contestants are going to share the… Wait, Meg looks furious. You can see her gritting her teeth, getting ready to finish this contest once and for all. Shoni smiles peacefully. She's not used to big animals going after her, so she doesn't think Meg would actually do anything crazy, as long as the submarine doesn't get too close. Okay, wait, Shoni's swimming towards Meg. They're gonna go at it. No, Shoni's telling Meg she can have the prize. Wow, crisis averted. Meg does not like to lose. Shoni, you certainly deserve the Pacifist of the Pacific trophy. Uh-oh. Meg doesn't look too happy about that. Better strap in, guys. Here we go. A shimmering portal closes behind your back. A smiley guide greets you. Hey, you're not the first person to travel between the worlds, but such a journey still remains something out of the ordinary. At first sight, the place is not that different from your own. The same people, the same transport, similar architecture. Then why did your friends swear it would be the trip of your life? Your travel agent told you the town you'd be visiting is at the seaside. That's why you ask your guide if you could spend some time near the ocean. He gives you a funny look, but agrees. The day's brilliant, sunny, and hot. It feels only natural to take your clothes off to get some sun. After a while, you get up to go have a swim in foamy waves. But your guide grabs your arm. His grip is unexpectedly strong, his face anxious. No, it was risky enough to come to the beach and stay so close to the water. And now you're going to take a chance with your life? Huh? That's all you can answer. There must be some misunderstanding. What's so dangerous about this beach? Rip currents? The guide suddenly calms down. Don't tell me you don't know why people from your world travel here? You shake your head, and the man starts to laugh. When he's done chuckling, he becomes serious and mutters, "Okay, I'll show you something you won't be able to forget. Ever. Let's go." You walk along the beach, keeping more than enough space between you and the water. What surprises and worries you the most is the eerie silence. The only sound you can hear is waves hitting the shore. No kids cheering, no surfers riding their boards, no fishers waiting for a good catch. Your guide slows down, and you see a small harbor. For some mysterious reason, it's separated from the open ocean by a thick metal fence with massive gates. You and your guide are heading for a large boat, or rather a ship. Just how many people are going to join us on this excursion?" you ask. "It's just the two of us and the crew," your guide replies. In our world, it's too dangerous to put to sea on a smaller vessel. And indeed, you notice no fishing boats or yachts nearby. You follow your guide downstairs and see a large cabin with a glass floor. Feel free to step on the glass, it's super thick and literally unbreakable. The ship starts vibrating and moves away from the shore. You're watching the rocky bottom, corals, and schools of colorful fish pass by. The water under the ship is getting darker. All of a sudden, your guide whispers, "Here it is." The creature is enormous, longer than a semi-trailer and almost as long as the vessel you're on. Its body shape resembles that of the modern-day monitor lizard, but longer and more streamlined. This makes the animal more fitted for swimming. Its limbs are short, with webbing between fingers. It also has a wide tail with a broad triangular plate on it. While swimming, the critter keeps its body stiff to reduce the drag through the water. The only thing that's moving is its mighty tail. As soon as you manage to get your voice under control, you scream, "A dino!" Nope, your guide doesn't agree. It's a Mosasaur. They aren't dinosaurs. These creatures are reptiles. You must have their close relatives in your world, snakes and monitor lizards. The Mosasaur you see is one of the largest species, which are quite rare. There are many kinds of these reptiles, and the smallest is a mere 3 feet long. The average length is 13 feet at the most. But big specimens still occur. That's why we have to build such large, sturdy ships. Just one tail swipe from this beast, and a smaller vessel would be broken in half. The Mosasaur, you still find it hard to wrap your mind around it, is swimming under your boat for some time and then swooshes up to the surface. Your guide answers the question in your eyes. Mosasaurs need air. That's why they regularly rise to get some. That's the reason they prefer shallow coastal waters. The creature returns. This time, you get a chance to see its jaws. Each is completed with 2 extra rows of triangular teeth. Behind them, you spot its tongue, and wait, is it really forked? All in all, the creature's mouth looks like one of a snake, including the teeth. They're also curved backward not to let prey slip away. Your guide chooses this moment to start telling you about the awesome creature. Yeah, Mosasaurus evolved around 100 million years ago, but 34 million years later something went wrong, and they didn't disappear like it happened in your world. That's why now our oceans are very different from yours. Fish and mammals in our oceans have developed special traits that allow them to avoid mosasaurs. Plus, thanks to this reptile, we have a much greater diversity of marine species. You notice your mosasaur dashing up and to the left. When it returns, there's something that looks suspiciously like a bird in its jaws. Noticing your surprise, the guide explains mosasaurs eat pretty much anything, from fish and mollusks to seabirds and turtles. Suddenly, your guide screams, scaring you out of your wits. There! Can you see it? Honestly speaking, at first you see nothing. But after straining your eyes, you spot two huge shadows circling each other. Your guide is brimming with excitement. You can't imagine how lucky we are! I've been doing this job for 15 years, but I've never seen a mosasaur fighting with a megalodon. For a moment, your mind stops functioning. Has he just said there are megalodons in his world? And then you see it. A giant animal is coming closer. It's almost 60 feet long, bigger than the whale shark, the largest of all the shark species in your world. Your guide keeps blabbing. Both of these creatures are top predators. Mosasaurs are usually a bit smaller than megalodons, but this one's huge! As the sea monsters get closer, you manage to get a better look at the Meg. Its jaws can open for almost 10 feet and are littered with 5 rows of sharp serrated teeth. They're built in such a way so that they don't crack even after hitting bone. The Meg is an ambush hunter, continues your guide. It probably wanted to take the mosasaur by surprise by attacking it from below, but this attempt failed. Now the predators are moving in circles, likely sizing each other up. They look rather angry and hungry. The mosasaurs trying to get closer to the shark's tail or fins. The creature understands there's no way it could bite through the Meg's bulky sides. The shark chooses another tactic. It's aiming for the mosasaur's long midsection. The critters start circling faster, getting closer to each other. The mosasaur keeps changing its pace from slow, almost lazy movements to nervous bursts of speed once it sees the Meg approaching. The shark is swimming in a steady way, watching the opponent with its piercing black eyes. You can't help but think it's pretty obvious which animal's going to be the winner. The mosasaur's jaws are suited for small prey, like fish. Its jaws wouldn't be able to open wide enough to get around the Meg. Because even though both creatures are of the same length, the Meg's body is much more massive. Its jaws are also more powerful, designed to deal with whales and other large marine animals. Plus, the mosasaur's body isn't efficient for high-speed swimming. It gives the shark another advantage. In a flash, the Meg twists its body and rushes at the mosasaur. Its maneuver is not to let the enemy get an upper hand by striking from below. The two powerful creatures clash each other. You see the mosasaur try to maneuver out of the Meg's way, but to no avail. You're clenching your fists, silently sending your support to the mosasaur, and then a sudden jerk, and you find yourself on the floor. Go, go, go! Your guide shouting at the skipper. It turns out the animals got so engrossed in their confrontation that they didn't notice the vessel and crashed into its side. Now it's crucial to get as far away from them as possible. If these huge creatures decide the ship is their common enemy, they may cooperate to attack it. Luckily for you, the beasts don't realize the thing they collided with is actually a container with food. The boat is getting further and further away, and you can only guess the outcome of the battle. Too soon for your liking, you reach the shore. The guide, who still looks thoroughly stunned, drives you back to the portal. You, similarly awed, thank him and step through the shimmering veil. You're clutching at a mosasaur tooth in your hand. It's the skipper's gift to you, the only reminder about the incredible world where mosasaurs are still roaming the oceans. In the left corner, Megalodon, considered the largest and most dangerous predator in the aquatic world. It has a reputation as a cold-blooded hunter who can break a fishing boat with one bite. We're gonna need a bigger boat. But what if he comes face-to-face with another giant water monster? In the right corner, Mosasaurus, an ancient dinosaur reptile which existed about 80 million years ago on the vast Atlantic Ocean. Their diet was large fish, giant turtles, other Mosasauruses, and even birds. So glad I'm not on the menu, ha ha! But to find out if this reptile can defeat the most massive shark that ever existed, we'll compare these monsters in several categories. Let's start with size. Megalodon became extinct 3 million years ago, but is still considered the largest and most dangerous predator in the ocean. We can only guess at the real size of Megalodon. The only remains found of this giant shark are teeth and vertebrae. Kinda sounds like my grandma. She used to leave her teeth everywhere. But with the help of calculations and computer modeling, scientists have concluded that Megalodon's length could be about 50 feet. It's like a New York City subway car, except it won't try to eat you. Now let's have a look at the right corner. The size of the Mosasaurus also remains a subject of discussion, but it's believed that the average length of this monster was about 36 feet. That's the size of a school bus. But in 2016, scientists found the largest Mosasaurus ever. Its length was 59 feet. Compare this to the tallest person ever, 8 feet. Mosasaurus was 7 times larger. Hey, nice job on the quick math. The first win goes to the Mosasaurus, 1-0 in favor of the ancient reptile. The next category is weight. Let's start with the fighter in the left corner. The most enormous individuals of the Megalodon species had an incredible weight from 27 to 59 tons. This is more than the weight of an empty Boeing 737, without the snacks and beverages. Although the Mosasaurus is longer, its weight isn't that much because of its body shape. Adult species could reach 14 tons, which is half the weight of a Megalodon. For comparison, an adult blue whale can weigh up to 100 tons or even more. But whales are not the peak predators like Megalodon and Mosasaurus. In this category, Megalodon wins and gets its first point. It's now 1-1. Let's move on to the next category, speed and agility. Megalodon wasn't the fastest fish on Earth. He could reach a speed of about 11 miles per hour. For example, the quickest sea creature is the sailfish. It can swim 68 miles per hour. But this didn't prevent Megalodon from becoming the top predator in the aquatic world. The average person only swims at a speed of 2 miles per hour. But the Achilles heel of Megalodon is agility and maneuverability. In fact, Meg is a 50-ton truck, so he can't turn and change direction quickly. If he's going to attack, he has only one chance to hit, because if he has to go for a second lap, his prey will have the opportunity to scoot. The exact speed with which Mosasaurus could swim is unknown, but scientists think he borrowed his swimming style from the eel. He would push off with his tail and steer with small side fins. This provided him with incredible maneuverability. In theory, this could help him jump out of the water, just like a scene from Jurassic World. But to know the exact speed with which Mosasaurus could swim, we need to find more remains of this ancient reptile. Right now, the point in the speed and maneuverability category goes to Megalodon, 2-1 in favor of the biggest shark of all time. Our next category is fighting instruments. First, we'll look at Megalodon's arsenal, his giant teeth. They were extremely sharp because of their triangular shape, and they reach 7 inches long. Megalodon's teeth are considered to be the largest that ever existed, and it had 250 of them. They were placed in 5 rows and could easily penetrate the thick skin of whales and other ancient creatures. In addition, the jaw itself was incredible. It was 6.5 feet wide. The average person could easily fit in there standing at full height. Boy, wouldn't that fall into the stupid selfie category. The muscle strength combined with the giant maw gave Megalodon one of the strongest bites on our planet. The primary tool of the Mosasaurus is the jaw. Its jaw held 40 to 50 sharp and massive teeth. They were conical in shape to penetrate even the thickest skin, like a knife through butter. And the jaw itself was similar to a snake's. So Mosasaurus was able to swallow colossal prey without even chewing. In some of the discovered remains of Mosasaurus, perfectly preserved remains of fish were found, and they were 3 feet long. The Mosasaurus head was a little over 2 feet long, and although this jaw wouldn't be enough to swallow Megalodon as a whole, it could bite off a pretty big piece of him, or even just rip off its tail. For this ultimate combat tool, the Mosasaurus gets the point. The score is tied 2-2. The last category is combat skills. Although Megalodon has a giant mass and sharp teeth, he reached the top of the food chain for another reason: intelligence. Scientists found many remains of whales with scars from Megalodon's teeth. These findings have helped to understand the hunting tactics of this giant shark. It turned out that Meg could find weaknesses in other marine creatures and knew where their vital organs were located. Other remains had many fractures. Apparently, the victim had experienced Megalodon's 50-ton ram. It could easily have broken through concrete walls. The whales didn't stand a chance. With the help of strategy and tactics, Megalodon could have handled prey much bigger than himself. He could attack the whale's tail and fins until he was completely immobilized. And then, when the victim was defenseless, well, like they say, dinner is served. Unlike sharks that love to ambush, Mosasauruses were quite aggressive. Scientists found many remains of the Mosasauruses with traces of teeth marks from their own species. Whether they fought for food or territory is unknown, but we know for sure that their fights were brutal. The remains had many fractures, but they didn't ram their victims. No, they grabbed its head and actively bit and struggled, breaking its bones. Such a technique is used by modern crocodiles. Also, the Mosasauruses had excellent vision, which gave them a chance to see the victim from afar and attack unexpectedly. Before we move on to the fight, a bonus round! Audience Sympathy Prize. Megalodon has appeared in many different movies, TV series, and comics, and each of its appearances has inspired fear in the audience. He really has a reputation as an ideal predator, and I would bet my money on him. Mosasaurus, on the other hand, doesn't have many appearances in popular culture, but the scene where he eats a great white shark in one bite surprised spectators around the world. So this dinosaur has the potential to become a star. This, of course, doesn't affect the outcome of the fight. Oh, there's the gong. Now we'll find out who will win this fight. Opponents meet in the waters off the coast of North America. Mosasaurus noticed Megalodon from far away and attacked first. However, his teeth are not big enough, and he barely hurts the Meg. Now, the giant shark is attacking the reptile. Mosasaurus is very agile, and he easily dodges the slow blows of the Megalodon. They break apart. It's time to change tactics, and Megalodon decides to go for a trick. Mosasaurus is a reptile, though a huge one. This means it breathes air and swims underwater only by holding its breath. Meg begins to descend deeper, luring Mosasaurus into a trap. In deep water, the ancient reptile feels uncomfortable and begins to make mistakes. Megalodon attacks fins and tail, depriving the enemy of mobility. Once the Mosasaurus loses its tail, the battle ends. Oops. Megalodon has again proved that he is the king of the seas, and he deservedly stands at the top of the food chain.
Billions of years ago, our whole solar system was nothing but a big cloud of dust and gas floating in space. Then, something happened to disturb that cloud, but scientists still aren't sure what exactly it was. It could have been a distant star that turned into a supernova with a bang that caused the dust cloud to start spinning. As it spun faster, the dust and gas got pulled into the center and created a thick, spinning disk called a solar nebula. The gravity at the center became so strong that hydrogen atoms started crashing into each other, producing helium and a lot of energy. As a result of all these space shenanigans, we got our sun about 4.6 billion years ago. This process used up more than 99% of the dust and gas in the big cloud. The leftover stuff started to come together to make different shapes. The cloud kept spinning, and bits of matter bumped into each other and stuck together. Some of these clumps got big enough to have their own gravity, which pulled even more matter to them. This is how the planets, including our Earth, were made. You wouldn't recognize our planet though, as it was nothing like we know and love it today. It was hot, and I'm not talking about perfect beach weather hot. It was scorching hot, as it was mostly made of magma, which is basically melted rock. Just imagine how hot it should be to make the stones melt. After a few 100 million years, Earth started to cool down. As the planet changed and its outer crust started to form, there were lots of volcanic eruptions. These volcanoes released water vapor, ammonia, and carbon dioxide into the air around the planet. Slowly, oceans started to form from the water vapor. The planet was every introvert's dream back then, with not a single living being around until the day when the first simple life forms began to appear and live in the new oceans. Those tiny organisms were single-celled microbes that gave birth to all future lives, including yours. They left signs in rocks that are about 3.7 billion years old. The signs were a type of carbon molecule made by living things. Then, at least 2.4 billion years ago, cyanobacteria evolved. These were the first organisms to make food using water and the sun's energy, and they released oxygen. This caused a big increase in oxygen, which made it hard for other microbes that couldn't handle oxygen to survive. Then, tiny microbes started living inside other tiny microbes. This way, they were forming organelles, small structures inside a cell with a specific function. One important organelle is called mitochondria, and it helps turn food into energy. For the first time, DNA got packed inside a part of the cell called the nucleus. These new complex cells, called eukaryotic cells, had different parts that each did a special job to help the whole cell work better. Soon enough, the earliest animals would rule the world. But don't get your hopes up. They weren't fluffy kittens. All the changes on Earth were happening against the background of the supercontinent Rodinia, which formed around 1.2 billion years ago. It pulled together almost all of Earth's land masses into one gigantic piece of land. It was surrounded by a massive ocean, so the whole planet looked like a giant land and sea puzzle. Unlike the green, lively continents we have now, Rodinia was barren and rocky, with no plants or animals on land. So, early life forms like algae thrived in the ocean. The breakup of Rodinia caused changes in Earth's climate and ocean currents. New coastlines and environments eventually helped diversify life on Earth. Cells began living together and finally evolved into the first animals around 800 million years ago. Sponges, and I don't mean the loofah you use to shower, were some of the earliest animals. By around 580 million years ago, they had neighbors, including fronds, ribbons, and quilts. But then, another 40 million years later, which is like a minute in evolutionary time, the conditions changed. Oxygen levels rose, and the first animals were replaced by new life forms. It was the beginning of the Cambrian period, the time of the giant shrimps and other creatures you'd rather never meet. Those invertebrates that ruled the planet looked so weird and not Earth-like that it took scientists years to realize these scary creatures were actually the ancestors of modern mollusks and crustaceans. Meet Hallucigenia, a creature with 7 or 8 pairs of spindly legs, the same number of paired spikes coming from its back, and a head you won't tell from its tail. Another cool creature from that period was the abnormal shrimp. Unlike most animals back then that were tiny, it was over 3 feet from head to tail. There was also the Weewaxia, that looked sort of like a stegosaurus, but without a head, a tail, or any legs. It looks like these creatures were born without defensive spikes and grew them as they got older. If they ran a beauty contest in the Cambrian period, Aishia would likely win. It had many common features with today's tardigrades. Although it was just 1 or 2 inches long, it was the nightmare of prehistoric sponges, and it clung to them with its multiple claws. We still have some live souvenirs from the Ordovician period living among us. Take lampreys, for example. The marine life kept flourishing. There were squid-like nautiloids with tentacles and a special shell with gas-filled chambers that made them float in the water. They swam well by squirting water out of their bodies and used their tentacles to catch prey. Another group of sea hunters was the conodonts with their tiny fossil teeth. The few complete fossils we have found show that they looked like eels with big eyes to spot their food. Fish back then were small, with mouths that pointed downward, which helped them suck up food from the ocean floor. Lampreys and hagfish are their living relatives today. The hard-bodied arthropods, like early relatives of crabs and spiders, started exploring life on land. They moved into freshwater and shallow lagoons, and one type of these creatures was the horseshoe crab. Even though they're called crabs, they're actually more like spiders and scorpions. Around this time, the first simple plants also began to grow on land, but a surprise ice age interrupted their plans. Most of the world's land at that time came together to make a huge supercontinent called Gondwana. It included what is now Africa, South America, Antarctica, and Australia. Another supercontinent called Laurentia included what would become North America. Gondwana drifted south until it settled at the North Pole. Huge glaciers started forming over what is now Africa. This led to a 20-million-year ice age and a huge extinction. At least half of all marine species were wiped out around 443 million years ago. The landscape wasn't looking too cozy, but have no worries, the first plants were about to hit the land. As temperatures rose and sea levels climbed again, the oceans began to recover during the Silurian period. Huge reef systems grew in the warm, clear tropical seas. You can still see remnants of these ancient reefs today. They are limestone rocks. The oceans were full of tiny creatures called plankton. At the top of the food chain were these terrifying sea scorpions. Some of these sea scorpions grew to over 6 feet long, and they were the largest arthropods ever. They looked like giant scorpions with huge, compound eyes to spot their prey, the primitive fish. They caught it with their strong, claw-like pinchers. Speaking of fish, they were starting to change and found new ways to eat, not just by sucking up food from the ocean floor. A group of spiny sharks developed jaws which made their mouths more dangerous. Even though these jawed fish weren't very big during this time, they were becoming better hunters and would later become top predators. On land, the first tiny, creepy crawlies began to show up. They were primitive centipedes and early ancestors of spiders. The first plants on land didn't have leaves, but they could stand up straight, thanks to their stiff stems. They also had special tubes inside them to move water and nutrients around, just like how our veins move blood. Mosses and other small plants soon followed and helped create a better environment for animals to start living on land too. The climate was nice and warm. The supercontinent Gondwana was still near the South Pole, but the big ice sheets from before melted away. Plants continued to grow and change during the Devonian period, but you'd probably be more impressed by a millipede as long as a car. If you visited the Earth back then, you'd wander in the first big forests made up of lycophytes, horsetails, and ferns. By the end of this period, the first successful trees appeared. They could grow really tall, up to 98 feet, about half as tall as the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and had thick trunks about 3 feet wide. They didn't have real leaves but had fern-like parts growing right on their branches and used spores to reproduce. The insects of that time were pretty wild. One of them was a huge dragonfly with wings as wide as a big pizza. This giant dragonfly lived in open places where it had room to fly, and its big eyes helped it spot its food, smaller bugs. It used its spiky legs to grab the insects it wanted to eat. Another monster from that time had wings about 22 inches wide and a mouth that looked like a beak. On the ground, the biggest bug ever known on Earth was wandering wild and free. It was a millipede as long as a car that likely ate fruits and seeds. The insect grew into such giants thanks to the extra oxygen in the air, up to 35% instead of the usual 21%. They could easily breathe even when they were huge, and there were no big birds to eat them, so they could grow really big and explore land and sky with nothing to worry about. But not for long. Fish started changing into the first animals that could live on land. These early fish had special fins that worked like arms and legs, and they could explore new swampy areas where there were lots of plants and no big predators. One of the oldest animals that show this change mostly lived in shallow water, where it walked on the bottom. It had a head that looked like a crocodile's, and it could move its neck and breathe air through its nostrils. It grew up to 10 feet long. Its back fins were bigger and stronger than the front ones, which helped it move on land. At the end of the Devonian period, Earth went through 2 long extinction periods when up to 70% of sea creatures disappeared. But the plants and animals living on land mostly survived these tough, cold times. It also had a cool, distant cousin, coelacanth. This fish was almost 5 feet long and had 4 fins that looked like limbs, but it never moved to land. It adapted to life in deep water, hiding in caves during the day and hunting at night. This deep-sea lifestyle probably helped coelacanth survive 4 of Earth's major mass extinctions. For a long time, people thought it was extinct until one was found off the coast of South Africa in 1938. So yep, it still lives in the deep parts of the Indian Ocean. During the late Paleozoic era, animals including a crazy mix of a polar bear and a saber-toothed cat got all independent and didn't have to live near the water anymore. They started laying eggs on land. Fish were becoming more different from each other, and trilobites were starting to disappear. New plants called conifers were growing, and 2 new types of animals also appeared. There were marine reptiles like early lizards and snakes and archosaurs, which later turned into crocodiles, dinosaurs, and birds. This period is sometimes called the Age of the Cockroaches, because an early kind of cockroach was lurking all over the world. But there was something way cooler than a cockroach, like a mix of a polar bear and a saber-toothed cat. It was an early relative of today's mammals with long legs that helped it run fast. It had sharp, saber-like teeth that could slice through the necks of huge plant-eating animals, but it used its teeth to rip big chunks of meat rather than chew. Scientists aren't sure if it had scales like its older relatives or fur like its mammal cousins, but they found hints of ancient poop that smaller relatives had hair, so this guy probably did too. There was also a big reptile that lived in the cold deserts of Eurasia. Imagine a creature as big and heavy as a black rhino, weighing about 2,400 pounds and stretching around 10 feet from head to tail. It was covered in thick, bumpy plates all over its body, which helped protect it from predators. Because it was so heavy and slow, it couldn't run fast, so these tough plates were its best defense. To stay so big and strong, Shonisaurus had to eat a lot of food all the time. It was one of the first big plant-eating animals to live on Earth. These animals were like early versions of big dinosaurs that came later. Even though Shonisaurus looked a lot like those dinosaurs, it was not closely related to them, kind of like how we're not closely related to whales and dolphins. The closest living relative to Shonisaurus is the tortoise, another slow-moving armored reptile. When you look at this guy, Dimetrodon, the first thing you notice is the big sail on its back that could remind you of some dinosaurs, but it was actually more closely related to us. It was a proto-mammal and had some unique features, especially in its skull. It had a small hole behind its eyes where jaw muscles attached, which is something dinosaurs didn't have. Dimetrodon also had different types of teeth for different uses, unlike dinosaurs that had rows of the same kind of teeth. The sail on its back was probably used to show off and attract mates, or scare away rivals. The last period of the Paleozoic, called the Permian, ended with the largest mass extinction on Earth ever. It wiped out more than 90% of all the species on the planet. The two big landmasses named Euramerica and Gondwana joined together to form one huge supercontinent called Pangaea. Around Pangaea was a giant ocean. Because Pangaea was so big, the middle of it was probably very dry, since rain clouds couldn't travel far enough to bring water to the interior. This made Pangaea's center a very dry place. The Permian extinction left room for new creatures to thrive. One of them was this guy, looking like a real-life Nessie from Scotland. It was a 20-foot-long reptile with a super long neck, even longer than its body and tail combined. And nope, it wasn't a dino yet, but a protosaurus that lived during the Middle Triassic period, which was just before the time of the first dinosaurs. Scientists used to think it was too heavy on top to walk on land because of its long neck, but newer studies show that most of its weight was centered around its body, so it could walk just fine. Between 240 million and 230 million years ago, a new successful group of animals started to rule the world. They managed to evolve from mostly dog and horse-sized creatures into the biggest monsters that ever existed on Earth. Scientists say they managed to do it thanks to some massive volcanic events. But it's a topic for another video. Life during and after the dinosaurs.